Hey guys, welcome back. So I'm pretty excited to show you guys, we've been working on the boys' bathroom for over a year. We started out by removing the shower doors, then we took down the towel bar and the toilet paper holder, patched those holes up and started putting new stuff up. Griffin did rip down the towel bar, we had to reinstall that. I'll leave a link for that video above. But since then, we've just haven't felt like it was enough. It didn't quite fit what we were looking for. The paint color turned more of a green color, and it wasn't the green we were looking for. So we decided to just change it all up completely and completely renovate the bathroom. We are keeping the major things, the toilet, the sink, the vanities, all the light fixtures, everything's staying, but we're going to refresh it. So I'll show you everything we're doing, I'll show you what we started with, and I'll show you the transformation. Stay with us, we've got a lot of stuff coming. This is going to be a longer video because we got a lot of work ahead of us, so let's get going. Alright, now we're going to start prepping for paint. First thing we're going to do is remove all of the socket panels, and then we're going to attach the screws to the back using painter's tape. That way everything stays organized and together, and then just take everything off the walls. Now the first thing we're going to do to prep the walls is we're going to sand them down a little bit. We picked this up from Amazon. It's a gold black drywall sander. It comes with 3 different grits of sandpaper, 100, 180, and 80 grit. It's pretty easy to assemble, and we're using this solely because they added a sand primer to the walls to give it texture, and over the course of time, as we add more paint to the walls, it actually comes up to a ridge and gets a little sharp. And it's a little too textured for us, so we're going to knock it back a little bit, smooth it out, still keep some of the texture, but it should mute it just a little bit. Once we're done with our sanding, we're going to make sure everything's cleaned up. We're going to wipe down the walls with a microfiber cloth and a little bit of water just to get all the dust off, and then clean up after ourselves. Get everything up off the floor. We want a nice clean surface for painting. Now since we moved in, all of the bathroom fixtures have been very loose, and that's because the silicone is all worn out. So we're going to be using this GE Supreme silicone meant for bathrooms to reapply around all of the fixtures. That should help stabilize them and waterproof it so we don't get any water behind the tub. We're going to start off by removing all of the silicone. We're going to cut it all away. Once that's completely clear and that area is cleaned off, then we're going to take our new silicone, apply it to the area, and then just run our finger along to create a seal to fill in all of the gaps. And that needs to set for at least 24 hours to make sure that it creates that watertight seal. And this is everything I'm going to be using for painting. It's important to use a good quality roller, especially for the larger areas, just so it applies smoothly. And I think a good quality brush is really important. I love this small handheld angled brush. It doesn't have a long extension, so you're able to get into all the grooves, especially when you're doing the edging. And I do like using these small fine brushes for doing your spot application of any of the paint that you might have missed. And then of course a good quality tape and something to hold your paint in. For paint, we're going to be using Behr Premium Plus Paint and Primer in an interior eggshell enamel in the color Peppery. Now this paint is pretty unique because they give you a pour spout. The pour spout's also used to open up the paint can, and then you attach it, and then it allows you to pour with little to no spillage.
Trying to get it to
Now Michelle's capable of doing a lot of the edging freehand, but since I don't have that surgically steady hand that she has, we're going to go ahead and tape everything up so I can just start hammering this out. Now that the tape's all up, we're going to be using the roller for all the large areas and the paintbrush for all of the corners, seams, and the cutting along the ceiling. Now that we've removed all the tape, we're going to check for any of the areas that need touch up, any of the white that's coming through, and just clean up all of our edges. Now I'm going to use a razor blade to clean up some of the paint that bled through the tape. Now that the walls are all done and everything's cleaned up, we're going to focus on the woodwork. It's looking pretty rough. Just from time, it started to fade and has a bunch of scratches and blemishes. So what we're going to be using is Restore Finish. We're going to be applying this using gloves and just a cloth and wiping it directly onto the woodwork. And this should help restore a lot of the faded wood and cover up a lot of the scratches and blemishes and just give this a new look and a new feel. When we moved in, we did put in a new shower head, but it sits a little too close to the wall. So we picked up this 4-inch brass shower arm that should extend it away from the wall enough where the actual handheld shower doesn't fall off all the time at the slightest bump, but also makes it so we can adjust it to whatever our preference is for this shower angle. Now once we've reinstalled our towel bar, we're going to be adding a shelf above the towel bar, about 10 inches above, using this wood and these floating brackets. Now we picked them up in black, we couldn't find a nickel finish, so what we're going to be using is a Rust-Oleum paint and primer in a satin nickel. We're going to give this a bunch of coats, make sure it's fully covered. Now the wood we're going to be using is actually a beam from an old bank that caught fire and burned down. This was a much larger piece that I picked up from a company called I Am Salvage on the south side of Milwaukee. Now he told me this bank was in the historic Mitchell area of Milwaukee and it caught fire many years ago, and it was an over 100-year-old bank. Now this beam is heavy duty and thick. It is a true 2 inches. Now we're going to cut this down to 36 inches in length, and we want it to be 6 inches wide. So we are going to be ripping the board using a Kreg Rip Cut circular saw guide. I picked this up at Home Depot, and I'll leave a link in the description below. Now we're going to sand everything out and make sure it's nice and smooth before we start cleaning it up with a tack cloth. Now the last thing we do before we install it is going to be using a spar-urethane. We're using Varathane Ultimate Spar-Urethane. We're going to be adding about 4 coats to this and sanding in between each one to get rid of any of the bubbles. Ended up with 3 coats of spar-urethane. I think that's actually going to be great. So what we're going to do now is we're going to put in the wall anchors and set in our brackets. Now we're going to center the brackets with the brackets or the arms of our towel bar. Then make sure everything is level in every direction before we drill our holes. Everything seemed good at first, but by the weight of the shelf, it started to come out of the wall. So we're going to switch out our anchors with these Cobra triple grips that can hold 61 pounds. All right, guys, that is it. We're all done. We got everything complete, and I think it turned out just great. We were a little concerned with the paint at first with how dark it is. With that seafoam green that we had in here before, it was very light, a little too bright in here. And I think the darkness really warms it up with refinishing the woodwork on here and just warming that up with the warm lights and the skylight, adding that extra light in here. It isn't too dark, even at night, and I think it looks wonderful. Now, overall, I think we probably spent under $150 on everything, including all of the hardware and the paint. And I think the paint was probably the most expensive thing we actually picked up. But this isn't it. This is not where we're stopping. The next major project we're going to be going after is going to be the seed room downstairs. We're going to be ripping out some carpet and doing a lot of work down there. So stay tuned for that. And I think that's going to be it for today, guys. If you have any questions or comments, leave them in the description below. Otherwise, thanks for watching, and we'll see you soon.